All right, man, peace. You know, brothers, there's a saying pertaining to certain people that they will never allow facts to get in the way of a good argument. And I've always stated that this notion that Steph Curry was some type of quote-unquote playoff choker was a false narrative concocted by the media in the aftermath of Steph Curry's terrible performance in the 2016 NBA Finals after the Golden State Warriors had won 73 games. He did not show up in that 7-game series against the Cleveland Cavaliers, and it took a disappearing act by him, as well as a sequence of events that one could describe as catastrophic for the Golden State Warriors to lose that series to LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and the Cleveland Cavaliers in 7 games on the last shot of Game 7, damn near. Basically the last shot of Game 7. It took all that for them to lose the title in 2016. And it's been very difficult for Steph Curry to be able to overcome the media concoction that he does not perform well in the playoffs since then, because he humbled himself and actually approached Kevin Durant and asked him to basically do what will be best for both the Golden State Warriors and Durant and have him join the team. Whenever you show any overt humility and you're supposed to be the alpha, people are going to take you to task for that, at least in the immediacy. But in the long run, they're going to be forced to acknowledge that what you did was best for the whole, for the collective. And if it's one thing that Steph Curry has shown, especially in the last few days, is that he's willing to take the humble route, take one for the team, so that those around him who might make missteps can find a reprieve. He's done the same thing for his wife as he did for Kevin Durant, because KD was never going to lead a team to a championship. Steph Curry basically opened up his home, his proverbial home, to Kevin Durant, welcomed him in, and gave him the education on how to play high-level basketball. Well, in the aftermath of Kevin Durant signing with the Golden State Warriors in 2016, Steph Curry performed marvelously in the playoffs in 2017. He was excellent in the playoffs in 2018. He had one bad game in the finals in Game 3, which stopped him from winning the NBA Finals MVP award. And now we're in 2019, where Kevin Durant is viewed as being the best player in the NBA. I think when it comes to overall skill set and what he brings to the table offensively and defensively, you can make a very compelling argument for him. But people forget about Steph Curry and the impact that he has on his team. Steph Curry is one of the top 5, arguably top 3, maybe even top 2 most offensively impactful players in the history of the NBA. When you think of the most impactful offensive players in the history of the league, it's Wilt Chamberlain, it's Michael Jordan, and then after that, you have to start considering Steph Curry there. Of course, you have Shaq, you have LeBron James. Steph Curry's name should be mentioned in that strata. He has changed the game. And when it comes to the metric known as plus minus, I'm sure that his plus minus is favorably comparable to almost any other player in the history of the league. His impact is unbelievable. So anyway, they're going to talk about what are the reasons why the Houston Rockets were unable to defeat the Golden State Warriors in Game 6. We already know the reason for that. That being that James Harden and Chris Paul are not championship level players. They're just not. It's very obvious to me that Chris Paul has anxiety issues that force him to do stupid things in clutch moments. And James Harden just disappears. And that's not an Achilles heel that he's going to be able to overcome over the course of his career, because he's already 30 years old. If he does not know how to respond well to pressure at this stage in his career, he just is who he is. He's a great regular season player. He's going to give you 32, 33, 35 points per game. He's going to have those 60-point triple-doubles against the Orlando Magic or against the Phoenix Suns in the regular season. The playoffs are going to come. His points per game are going to drop. His field goal percentage is going to drop. It's going to hover somewhere around 39 to 40%. He's going to miss big free throws in big games, and he's going to have disappearing acts. That's just who he is. So unless they bring in a very high IQ basketball head coach, they're not going to be much more than a second-round team over the course of the next 2 or 3 years. So they're going to talk about it. I'm going to chime in.
Steph Curry with the shot. No KD, and the Rockets still couldn't get it done. Eliminated in 6 games and at home by the defending champs. Mac?
I was surprised that Golden State won Game 6, but I was not shocked. I really wasn't. As a matter of fact, heading into that game, I said to myself, Golden State is going to be very keyed in. The Rockets are going to feel the pressure, and this game is going to be close. And in the first half, when it was tied at halftime and Steph Curry had no points, I said to myself, wow, one of 2 things are going to happen. Either Golden State is going to win this game and the Rockets are going to be called chokers, or Golden State is going to lose this game and Steph Curry is going to confirm to the naysayers that he is a playoff choker.
Max, who is most to blame for Houston's failure?
James Harden. And
I'm not just going to go all in on James Harden. I'm also going to look at Daryl Morey as well as Mike D'Antoni. After a while, you're a fool if you do not understand exactly what you have to work with. You're Daryl Morey, supposedly you're this genius, especially when it comes to analytics. You should be able to look at James Harden and say to yourself, there are certain components that he's missing from his overall character as a basketball player that he's not going to be able to assume or fabricate over the course of these next 3 years. He needs help with that. So that means I have to find him a new coach. We might have to change the system. But because Daryl Morey is so addicted to just taking three-point shots and layups, he's not going to do that. That's where the pride comes in.
James, why do you make me do this? Why? I didn't want to do this.
Yes, you did.
These guys write their scripts right now.
I agree with that.
They're the writers of the script. And I know Harden's the best player on the team. And
that's why it's so important for the average observer to make sure that they're paying attention to what the script says. The Steph Curry script should have always said Steph Curry is a very good playoff performer who can be taken out of his game sometimes. You can push Steph Curry to doubt himself because he's such a rhythm player. But he's had enough stellar performances that he should never be considered a playoff choker, ever.
He did a lot of good things, but guys, what did I say all season? Harden has to do what he was doing in the regular season in the playoffs when it mattered most. As Jay-Z said about Nas, went from top 5 to not mentioned at all.
Well, here's the issue with your assessment, Max Kellerman. James Harden has been a 43% field goal shooter during the regular season. So in the playoffs, especially when teams are starting to key in on him, you should expect his field goal percentage to drop down. Even Michael Jordan's field goal percentage would drop down in the playoffs because you're facing better teams with better defenses. The thing is, what else can you do other than pull up from three or try to get layups? I think that James Harden's field goal percentage might go up if he intermixed the mid-range and the post-up. But you and your homeboy Daryl Morey are forbidding him from doing that.
Harden's not a top 5 player in the NBA. Get out of here with that. Not if you can't rely on him
I agree with that.
When it matters most. But every season he's the best or the second best player in the regular season. Be the best player now. The way Kawhi Leonard's the best player now.
Well, Kawhi Leonard's skill set translates more to the postseason than James Harden's. And also, if you pay very close attention, the most elite of the elite players in the NBA still utilize the mid-range.
The way KD is the best player now when he was healthy. The way the Freak is the best player right now. And don't give me this, oh, look at the numbers. When you need him most. Game 1. Dribbles out of bounds. Next possession. Takes the three. You know he's not going to hit it. Looks to get bailed out. He jumps under Draymond's legs looking for the call for the ref.
That's another reason why it's so difficult for James Harden and Chris Paul to ascend to a high level in the playoffs. There's this aura around them that they're trying to junk up the game and do it the cheap way. They're not willing to earn a championship in the upright way. A lot of people do not understand why there's still so much adoration of Michael Jordan to this day. It's because when you go back and watch those games in the 90s, Jordan didn't flop. He wasn't running around trying to junk up the game. It was his skills versus your skills. And his skills always proved to be supreme. That's why people admire him and admire how he played even to this day. Chris Paul's trying to figure out how he can leg whip somebody, how he can punch him in the nuts and all this other nonsense and try to creep his way to the third round of the playoffs and hopefully the championship round. And it's not going to happen. I don't even believe, just looking at how these playoffs have gone, I'm not even quite sure if the Rockets would have beaten the Portland Trail Blazers had they been able to defeat the Warriors. And I damn sure don't think they would have beaten Milwaukee because I believe Milwaukee's coming out of the East. I don't think that the Rockets would have beaten them. I would like to see Toronto come out of the East because I like Kawhi. I like Giannis also, but I like to watch Kawhi Leonard play more than I like to watch Giannis play. But I don't think the Rockets would have beaten any of those teams. I'm not even quite sure if they would have beaten Toronto.
We know what happened. We all saw it. That's when down 3 on the road against a better team, that's when you need to hit the 3. Game 3 at home. Remember, oh, maybe he's coming along. He hits the 3 in overtime. Timeout, back up. He didn't touch the ball at the end of regulation. Why? It said revelation almost, because the revelation was, the reveal was, these dudes didn't trust him under pressure. They kept going to Chris Paul. He didn't touch it at the end of regulation. They go to overtime. Now they're up 3. Harden hits the 3. I was thinking, look, that's an overrated clutch shot. There's some clutch component to it. But when you're up 3 at home in overtime, now you feel brave. You can hit the 3. What about when you're down to
Plus, that was a travel. That so-called sidestep, he took about 4 steps to the right, man. It's a big joke. The things that he's allowed to get away with are a big joke.
3 on the road, and you could tie the game, or you take the L. Okay, but you know what? Maybe he'll get his confidence going. No, game 6, what happens? Turns the ball over 4 times in the 4th quarter in a must-win game. Stephen A.
Look, we all know that James Harden is a turnover machine. That's nothing new.
Including with 1:28 left, turns the ball over. Chris Paul looks to get the foul, right? Remember this? Harden's complaining to the ref, not getting back on defense. You know when he hits the 3? When the game's really over. 24 seconds left in the game, down 8. Harden hits the quick 3. Oh, maybe he's keeping him in it. Come on, man. In that situation, the pressure's off. Whenever you...
Max Kellerman, the job of the coach is to put a player like James Harden in positions where it's not always do or die. When you're having too many do or die situations, that's a coaching problem. When we talk about how the Bulls never went to a 7th game, that's not only an after effect of Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and Dennis Rodman, etc. That's also Phil Jackson making sure that his players are put in positions to succeed in Game 4 and Game 5 so that when Game 6 comes, they can close teams out and not have to go to a do or die Game 7. There are too many scenarios where James Harden and CP3 are placed in conditions that are not going to be conducive to them being as successful as they can be. Once again, it's very obvious to me that CP3 suffers from some type of anxiety issue because in the closing moments of big games, he just totally flips out.
You see the pressure really ratchet up in the playoffs. You know what's going to happen with Harden. It doesn't mean it'll always be this way, but that's how it's been so far. I don't take any pleasure in saying it.
Yes, you do.
But we got to tell the truth. We get paid to tell the truth.
Tell the truth.
And that's the truth.
Well, I don't think you're lying. I just think you're misinformed. I believe that when it comes to James Harden, I am not about to sit here and defend him, go the complete opposite direction of you, because you do make some valid points in terms of, big moments. Here's where James Harden is ultimately guilty of. You ain't Steph Curry. You ain't Steph Curry.
Well, Stephen A. Smith, it's nice to see you acknowledge that because for the most part, most of you NBA pundits would rank James Harden ahead of Steph Curry. There were many NBA pundits who were ranking James Harden ahead of Steph Curry, even in the years where Steph Curry won his MVP awards. For whatever reason, it's very difficult for people to accept that Steph Curry is as great a player as he is.
That's what we saw. Now, having said all of that, when we talk about the question, who's the most to blame, I can't believe I'm about to say this. I actually think that James Harden, folks are being entirely too hard on him. Let me tell you something. We're going to talk about Mike D'Antoni today. And I'm going to tell you why we're going to talk about Mike D'Antoni.
Fertitta's ready to get rid of his ass. It would not shock me. I guarantee you right now, Fertitta's having conversations with Daryl Morey, and he's trying to figure out if Daryl Morey is the guy that he wants to keep. I think that Fertitta is smart enough to understand that you cannot just fire Mike D'Antoni. You have to fire the person who is trying to push and promote this analytics shit, because Daryl Morey knows if his Rockets team ever wins the championship, all of a sudden he's viewed as this epic genius, and that's really what he's about.
Tony, Max Kellerman, what did I say all year long? When you were talking about Chris Paul, and I reminded you that Andre Iguodala was hurt too, and you said Chris Paul goes down in Game 5, had he not gone down, they would have won.
I've been saying for the last year that the loss of Andre Iguodala was bigger for the Warriors in last year's series, at the very least as big as the loss of Chris Paul was for the Rockets. And we've seen it in this series where Andre Iguodala, I'm not going to say that he's been dominant, but his imprint on this series has been unbelievable. It's been momentous, gargantuan, whatever term you want to use, both his offense and his defense.
And I've made the claim to you, I don't want to hear about numbers.
The dude, Andre Iguodala, made 5 3-point shots in Game 6 in Houston.
I'm telling you that Golden State would have found a way to beat them. No matter what they did in Game 7, Golden State would have found a way. So we fast forward, and I kept saying why. Because of the system that D'Antoni deploys in Houston. You can't beat a team like Golden State with a one-man army. Can't do it. Can't do it. I said, I don't care what you're seeing from James Harden during the regular season. They're going to figure you out. And I said, the numbers are not going to tell a story. It's the style of play that matters. How did I prove my point? James Harden right here through this series.
Stephen A. Smith, I have to cut you off for a moment. I have to ask you this question because I partially agree with you. But what runs hand in hand with the style and the system of the coach is the mentality of the player. Is James Harden someone who has the psychological framework or blueprint in his mind like a Steph Curry, who not only can he dominate on the ball, but is willing to do all that moving off the basketball? Is James Harden that guy? Because I don't think that he is. Is James Harden someone who's willing to say, I'll score 35 points only when I'm hot, and the other games, if I score 13, I don't care? Is he that guy? That's something that you have to ask yourself before you try to make distinctions between whose fault it is.
This series averaged 40 minutes.
Or whose fault it is exclusively.
34.8 points, 7 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 44% shooting, 35% three-point range. Those are similar to the numbers he did during the regular season. Now we can talk about moments, and I'm not disputing what you're saying is, because again, I'm willing to concede he's not Steph Curry. But the flip side to it is this. You know what Steve Kerr did? After they lost, I'm at the game. After they win, but Kevin Durant gets hurt, game 5, Golden State, okay? Quinn Cook is out there shooting the basketball. What the heck? Why is he out there? Steve Kerr like, all hands on deck. This is what we gonna do, because we gotta beat them back.
Quinn Cook should have been getting more minutes even when Kevin Durant was healthy. Quinn Cook can give you a good 3 to 5 minutes in an important playoff game, and maybe even a good 10 minutes in a not so pressurized playoff game, like games 1, 2, 3. You could run Quinn Cook out there for a good 7, 8 minutes.
I committed. Okay, they go into game 6. Kevon Looney shows up, 14 points.
Yeah, he was great, and I'm not a big advocate for Looney at all, but he was very impactful.
Iguodala, 5 3-pointers. Quinn Cook's coming off the bench. Listen, plays 16 minutes, doesn't commit 1 turnover. Not 1 turnover. You saw Andrew Bogut played 11 minutes. Didn't score, but played 11 minutes for you. What I'm telling you is we got 9 or 10 dudes out on the court, and they're funny. They're moving the basketball. They're spacing. They're spreading the floor. They're making sure. I mean, Sean Livingston, who's considered to be on his last leg, yammed it down the middle for a dunk.
Well, Sean Livingston, he can still conjure up an impact on a basketball floor, as long as he's not out there for too long.
Dunk, scored on another layup. Everywhere you turn, you saw coaching, and you saw individuals that were prepared for the moment. And who's to prepare to be without Kevin Durant? How can you assume that's going to happen? But when it happened, they were ready, okay? So
why would they not be prepared to be without Kevin Durant? They've been very successful without him. I actually think that at certain moments in many of these series that Kevin's style of play paralyzes their offense. They just stand around and watch him. There's nothing against KD. KD is a great singular offensive player. But I do think that if he were to leave and they could replace him with a very good to borderline great 3-and-D guy, which is what Tobias Harris is for that role, Tobias would be a great 3-and-D guy for that role. Is he anywhere near Kevin Durant? No. He's about 60% the player that Kevin Durant is. But if you brought him into Golden State, maybe fortified their front line, gave the ball back to Steph Curry and said, look, Steph, go out there and do your thing, 2016 style, they could be just as good.
So what happens? What does Houston do? You got CP3 played an exceptional game. Exceptional game.
He played well stat-wise, yeah.
The only exceptional game he played this series. Only exception. CP had the numbers, but why were you not aggressive? Why were you constantly deferring and giving the ball over to James Harden?
Because Harden is supposed to be the alpha, that's why.
And walking to the side. Did Father Tom catch up to you, or did Mike D'Antoni catch up to you? Eric Gordon, why was he not touching the ball enough?
Because they took him out of the offense, Stephen A. Smith. They were not going to allow Eric Gordon to beat them like they did in Game 3. Every series, there's always going to be a game, especially if the series goes 7, where a role player or a starter who's marginalized scores about 25 points and wins a game where he was allowed to be way more impactful and potent than he should have been allowed to be. So it's easy for Golden State to say, not him today. Harden's going to get his points. We're going to put Iggy on Harden. We're going to put Clay on Chris Paul and or Eric Gordon, whoever's hotter. And, we'll just let the chips roll where they may.
In Game 6, where the hell was he at? You're looking at some of the things that have transpired, and once again, what happens is a guy like James Harden constantly has the ball in his hands. Yes, he had opportunities to make shots. He was also being doubled. He was also having the ball forced out of his hands on occasion. Mike D'Antoni's system in Houston ain't gonna beat Golden State.
Okay, look, that's not true if James Harden's clutch. See, they're right there. Mike D'Antoni's system. I've heard a lot on NBA Countdown, by the way. Like, I don't know if you heard this guy, Jalen Rose.
Yeah.
You know, it may be before your
Yeah,
time
I
at Michigan.
I watched him this weekend. He did a great job.
The point.
I know that it has to be very annoying for Molly Karam that every time they bring up Jalen Rose, they feel this need to remind everyone that they're married. Okay, we get it. They're married. Are you bringing that up because you're jealous that you're not the one hitting it? I mean, who gives a shit?
Point is, like, and the guys are making good points, but they're actually making the analytics argument without realizing it, I think, which Isaiah Thomas, the Hall of Famer, did on this show.
According to you.
If you want to argue, look, D'Antoni, all about the threes, the paint, and the free throws, sometimes post-ups and mid-range are the right shots because they're giving them to you. Yes, and the analytics would support that. Once that shot is a higher yielding shot, right? It's a higher return on your investment. Take that. And in the playoffs, sometimes that's the case. So if you want to...
See, with Max Kellerman, many times you have to break things down to him using boxing terminology because I think that he would understand things better when you use boxing terminology. It's very difficult for him to understand basketball. So we could analogize posting up in the NBA on offense to a fighter in the early rounds committing to the body. You want to break down your opponent early to the body so that later on in the fight, they have no legs. In the NBA, the reason why you post up is to break down the defense, to have them confused, especially if you have a great low post scoring threat. That can intimidate the opposing team, that can get them into foul trouble. You get a lot of their starters out of the game, you bring in the backups, and then that might open things up for the three-point shot later on. But to use the three-point shot as your only offensive goal, no, you don't want that. Of course, people are going to say, well, they also want layups. But the point of you trying to get the layup is that you're hitting enough three-pointers that the defenders is going to come out and try to press you so that you can blow by them. You always want to mix in the mid-range and the post-up because that softens up the opponent's defense.
I want to argue it's D'Antoni because of that. Like, they needed to go to the mid-range and the post a little bit more under pressure when that's being given to them.
Max, the issue is that if they have not been doing that all year, you can't ask them to do that in Game 6 of the playoffs. That's why you make that a part of your system throughout the season. You can't just wait into the playoffs and when teams are taking away the three-point shot and then say, okay, let's just go shoot mid-range shots and post up. That's something that you drill over the course of the year, and you do it within the framework of the team schematic. You can't just work on mid-range, when you're at shoot-around and say, okay, I'm going to do this in the game if I need it. No, it has to be a part of your offensive principles so that the players can do it, by reflex.
Okay, fine, make that argument. But Stephen A. Smith, people who are texting me and DMing me and everything and calling me, a lot of people around the league, oh, see, this proves exactly what you just said. They wouldn't have won last year anyway, even if they had CP3. No, it doesn't. Last year was last year. They went to a Game 7. A Game 7. And just like last year, in this Game 6, in this Game 1, by the way, not just 6, but 1. If Harden's a clutch player, they win the game. D'Antoni's system can work, but your engine's got to be clutch.
You brought up the name Isaiah Thomas.
Yes.
Friday night, after 11:26, Isaiah Thomas texts me. It says, tell Max he loves to say 3 points is more than 2. Tell him I said I do recall telling him 5 scoring areas is more than 3 scoring areas. So my point to you is this. We ultimately get back.
Max is smirking because in his mind he's saying these people think that they've outsmarted me or that they proved me wrong, but they haven't. Because once again, according to Max's argument, the mid-range shot and the post-up is okay once you're in the playoffs and teams are taking away the three-point shot. What Max does not understand is that, once again, you cannot just ask a fighter to start throwing body shots in the 6th round of a fight when you have not been drilling it all throughout fight camp. There's a reason why athletes train certain things so that they can execute it when it counts. But once again, because he's just a commentator and, he probably has not, he's been a talker for most of his life, he can't comprehend that.
Back to D'Antoni. We ultimately get back to his system. We ultimately get back to that one man. And this is why I keep telling you, Golden State would have found a way. When you're playing a game of basketball, you can't look at stuff in hindsight and saying, okay, well, you know what? They missed 27 consecutive threes, and if that hadn't happened, they would have beat Golden State. What I'm saying to you is, when I'm making the point that if they had made it, then Golden State would have found a way to make more. What happens? See, do you realize Steph Curry was scoreless in the first half?
I do.
Scoreless! Scoreless! So what happened? What happened? Klay Thompson is holding down the fort. Steph Curry is scoreless. Steph Curry is scoreless. And everybody said, what the hell's going on here? And then all of a sudden, Steph Curry...
Yeah, that was an unbelievable eruption. That's one of the great playoff performances in, recent NBA history. It really is. For him to score 33 points like that in those conditions on the road in a series that for all intents and purposes was recognized as a conference final caliber matchup more than a semifinal matchup, that was incredible.
We went ballistic.
I gotta say
I'm just saying that's what happens.
I gotta say something.
That's what happens.
When I say these guys write their scripts,
Yeah.
Steph is the perfect example. What have I been up here saying? Because of Harden, Steph gets a pass. Steph has also consistently, throughout his career, when they needed him most in high-leverage playoff games, been a lesser version of himself, at least as a scorer, right? First half, he's scoreless. I'm sitting there going, this is what I'm talking about. When I say these guys write their own scripts, he rewrote it in the second half.
He rewrote it for you. He rewrote it for you. I will say this. Had he continued onto that trend, let's say he ended the game with 8 points and Golden State loses by 3, then he starts to confirm the bullshit narrative. That's what he would have done. What he really did was something more along the lines of what he's always done outside of those 2016 finals.
He went bananas in the second half. He was unconscious, lights out. This is what I mean. Harden had the same opportunity. He couldn't get it done. Steph did.
And I'm saying to you,
Well, Harden's resume is much more consistent with him not coming through than Steph Curry's is.
I have no problem with Harden being held accountable, but he didn't have the same opportunity because he didn't have the same cast of teammates and he didn't have the same coach. And that
Stephen A. Smith, we're not going to blame the teammates on this one, bro. We're not going to blame the teammates on this one, especially when coming into these playoffs. Many people said the Rockets have a better chance this season than they had last season.
matters. That matters. When you look at Mike D'Antoni,
He turned the ball over 4 times in the fourth quarter.
Excuse me. Again, I am not absolving him. I told you, James Harden, what he did expose us, he's no Steph Curry. Because, again, those leverage moments.
That's good. So stop ranking him above Steph Curry.
Moments he didn't produce. But let's not sit up here and give a coach a pass when you basically.
All right, we gotta go to Bump.
You got one man.
Gotta go to Bump.
Run everything through him.
James Harden, no Steph Curry. Coming up late.
So that's basically it on that. We'll see what happens with the Rockets in the offseason. I just every era, there's always a team that's very good, but they just can't get over the hump. Their job really is to add color to the league. Back in the back in the 80s in the Western Conference, you had teams like the Nuggets. They would challenge the Lakers in the second round or maybe even the third round. They lose in 6 games. You also had in the 90s, you had teams like the Pacers and the Miami Heat of Alonzo Mourning and Tim Hardaway, so on and so forth. In the 2000s, you had the Sacramento Kings. There are always teams that are not quite good enough to get over the hump, but you know that they're a part of the stumbling block for the championship team, or really a hurdle, because the championship team is not going to stumble. But onward and upward for the Golden State Warriors. So peace.